The first psychological trick to ignore anyone is not simply refusing to answer them. It is learning to stop giving them emotional reactions they can predict and control. Many people believe they are ignoring someone because they have stopped sending messages, yet they continue checking their phone, replaying conversations, imagining what the other person is thinking, and waiting for a reaction. Their silence may be visible, but their attention is still trapped. Real ignoring begins when you remove your emotional energy from the person and stop allowing their behavior to control your mood. Some people know exactly how to pull you back into a conversation. They may criticize you, make a disrespectful comment, create drama, or say something they know will upset you. The moment you become angry and react, they regain access to your attention. Your long message gives them something to argue with. Your emotional defense gives them proof that they can still influence you. Your need to explain keeps the connection alive. Even negative attention can become a reward when someone is trying to provoke you. This is why emotional control is the foundation of strategic ignoring. You cannot ignore someone effectively if every word they say creates an immediate response inside you. You must learn to separate what they do from what you choose to do. Their behavior may be unfair, immature, or deliberately provocative, but you still control whether you answer immediately, argue for hours, or allow the situation to occupy your entire day. The goal is not to deny your emotions. The goal is to stop treating emotions as commands. When you feel the urge to react, pause before doing anything. Ask yourself, asterisk, asterisk, what will my response change? Asterisk, asterisk. Will it create understanding? Will it solve a real problem? Or will it only restart a cycle that has already repeated many times? If your response will only produce more conflict, you do not have to give it. You can allow the emotion to settle before deciding whether communication is necessary. A pause gives your judgment time to become stronger than your impulse. Many people react because they fear silence will make them appear weak. They believe that if they do not defend themselves, the other person will think they have won. But powerful people do not treat every disagreement as a competition. They understand that silence can be a decision, not a defeat. You do not lose your dignity because you refuse to argue with someone who is not listening. You do not become weak because you choose peace over a pointless emotional battle. Your strength is shown by your ability to choose where your energy goes. This does not mean silence is always the correct response. If someone has misunderstood you in a situation that matters, a clear explanation may be useful. If a boundary has been crossed, you may need to speak directly. If there is harassment, threats, or serious harm, practical action may be necessary. Ignoring does not mean becoming passive. It means refusing to give unnecessary emotional reactions while choosing the response that protects your well-being. One of the strongest ways to ignore someone is to stop defending yourself repeatedly. You can explain your position once. You can communicate your boundary clearly. But when someone continues twisting your words, repeating the same accusation, or refusing to understand, endless explanation may only keep you trapped. Some conversations are not designed to reach truth. They are designed to keep you emotionally involved. When you recognize this, you can stop participating without needing the final word. Your attention is valuable. Every hour spent analyzing an insult, checking whether someone viewed your message, or imagining how they will react is attention taken away from your own life. The person may be physically absent, but they continue occupying your mind. Emotional detachment means reclaiming that space. You begin focusing on your goals, your work, your health, and the people who treat you with genuine respect. You do not do this to make anyone jealous. You do it because your life should not remain centered on someone who repeatedly disrupts your peace. When you stop reacting, people may respond in different ways. Some may become calmer because the conflict is no longer being fed. Others may increase their attempts to provoke you because the old method no longer works. Their behavior can reveal whether they wanted communication or simply wanted emotional control. But you do not need to watch their reaction closely. The purpose is not to make them uncomfortable. The purpose is to become less controlled by what they do. True emotional detachment is quiet. You do not announce that you are ignoring someone. You do not post indirect messages to make them wonder about you. You do not create artificial jealousy or use silence as punishment. Those actions keep your attention connected to the person. Instead, you stop feeding the cycle. You become less reactive, less available to unnecessary drama, and more focused on what deserves your energy. Over time, this creates a stronger form of confidence. You realize that you do not need to answer every insult to protect your value. You do not need to win every argument to trust yourself. You do not need another person's understanding before you can move forward. You can remain calm while someone misunderstands you. You can feel anger without allowing anger to control your words. You can choose silence without becoming emotionally powerless. The first step is not making someone feel your absence. It is making their behavior less powerful inside your mind. And once you stop giving automatic emotional reactions, you can begin reducing your availability without creating unnecessary drama. The second psychological trick to ignore anyone is to become less available without turning your distance into a dramatic performance. Many people think ignoring requires suddenly disappearing, blocking someone without explanation, or creating silence so intense that the other person becomes confused. But strategic distance is often quieter than that. It begins when you stop giving unlimited access to your time, attention, and emotional energy. You do not need to announce that you are stepping back. You simply stop making yourself constantly available to someone who repeatedly takes your presence for granted. When you are always reachable, always ready to reply, and always willing to adjust your schedule around another person, they may begin seeing your availability as something guaranteed. Your attention becomes predictable. They learn that no matter how they behave, you will respond quickly, forgive immediately, and return to the same pattern. This does not mean being kind or responsive is a weakness. The problem begins when your availability continues even after the relationship becomes one-sided, disrespectful, or emotionally exhausting. Reducing availability means changing the pattern without creating unnecessary conflict. You do not have to ignore every message or behave coldly. You can respond when you genuinely want to respond rather than replying from fear, guilt, or pressure. You can take time before answering. You can stop interrupting your work, rest, or personal goals to solve every problem someone brings to you. You can decide that another person's urgency is not automatically your responsibility. This creates emotional space and reminds you that your time belongs to you. Many people remain constantly available because they fear what will happen if they are not. They worry that the other person will lose interest, become angry, accuse them of changing, or choose someone else. But if a relationship only survives when you are always accessible, the relationship may be depending on your constant effort rather than mutual respect. Powerful distance allows you to observe what happens when you stop carrying the entire connection. Do they make an effort? Do they respect your time? Do they communicate honestly? Or do they only become interested when they feel they are losing control over your attention? This observation is important, but it should not become a manipulation game. You are not reducing availability to make someone chase you. You are not counting how many times they contact you or trying to create jealousy. Those behaviors keep your mind focused on their reaction. The purpose is to stop overinvesting where your effort is not respected. You are creating space to understand the relationship more clearly and to protect your own energy. One of the most difficult habits is learning not to answer immediately when someone creates emotional pressure. They may send a message that makes you feel guilty. They may demand an explanation for your silence. They may act as if you are responsible for fixing their mood. In those moments, you may feel an urge to respond quickly just to remove the discomfort. But responding only to escape guilt can return you to the same cycle. You are allowed to think before answering. You are allowed to decide whether a conversation is useful. You are allowed to protect your peace without treating another person cruelly. Becoming less available also means stopping unnecessary effort. You no longer send repeated messages when someone does not respond. You do not constantly check whether they are online. You do not create excuses to start conversations with someone who gives little effort in return. You stop trying to maintain a connection that only exists because you keep pushing it forward. This does not mean you become passive in every relationship. It means you allow effort to become visible. When you stop doing everything, You can see what the other person is willing to contribute. Sometimes people will notice the change and ask what happened. You can communicate honestly without over-explaining. A simple response may be enough. Asterisk, asterisk, I am focusing more on my own priorities. Asterisk, asterisk, or asterisk, asterisk, I need some space right now. Asterisk, asterisk, you do not need to create mystery. You do not need to invent excuses. Directness can be respectful while still protecting your boundary. If the person cares, they may listen and adjust. If they become angry because they no longer have unlimited access, their reaction may reveal that they valued convenience more than mutual respect. Reducing availability is also a way of rebuilding self-respect. Every time you abandon your own priorities to satisfy someone else, you teach yourself that their needs are more important than yours. Over time, this can create resentment. You may feel invisible because you give so much while receiving little. By creating space, you begin restoring balance. You return attention to your work, health, family, friendships, and personal goals. You stop treating another person's presence as the center of your life. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first because silence creates uncertainty. You may wonder whether they will notice. You may feel tempted to check their reaction. But that temptation is part of the attachment you are learning to weaken. Instead of asking, asterisk, asterisk, do they miss me? Asterisk, asterisk, ask, asterisk, asterisk, am I using this space to rebuild my own peace? Asterisk, asterisk. The first question keeps your attention on them. The second returns control to you. True distance does not need to be loud. You do not have to announce your absence, post indirect messages, or prove that you are busy. You simply become more intentional. You give your time where it is valued. You stop allowing guilt to control your availability. You respond because you choose to, not because you are afraid of what silence might cause. When you become less available, you create room for reality to appear. You can see whether the connection is mutual or whether it depended entirely on your effort. You can discover whether someone respects your boundaries or only respects your constant attention. And you can begin separating genuine relationships from patterns that survive only because you refuse to step back. And once you create that quiet space, silence allows you to observe what people reveal when you stop chasing, explaining, and carrying the connection alone. The third psychological trick to ignore anyone is to use silence as a way to observe rather than as a weapon to control. When you stop chasing conversations, sending repeated messages, fixing every misunderstanding, or carrying the entire relationship, you create space for people to reveal what they are willing to do without being pushed. Silence removes the pressure you were constantly applying, and once that pressure is gone, the truth often becomes easier to see. Many relationships feel balanced only because one person is doing most of the work. One person starts every conversation, checks in first, apologizes first, solves every conflict, and keeps the connection alive. Because they are always active, they may never notice how little effort the other person is giving. But when they become quiet, the pattern becomes visible. Does the other person reach out with genuine interest? Do they ask how you are? Do they make an effort to understand what changed? Or does the connection disappear because it depended entirely on your attention? This is why silence can become a powerful form of observation. You are not using it to make someone anxious or force them to chase you. You are allowing their natural behavior to appear without constantly influencing it. If you always remind someone to care, you may never know whether they would care on their own. If you always repair every disagreement, you may never learn whether they value peace enough to take responsibility. When you stop doing everything, you give the other person an opportunity to show their true level of effort. However, silence should not be treated as a test with a deadline. You do not need to count how many hours pass before someone contacts you. You do not need to watch their social media and search for hidden messages. The moment you become obsessed with their reaction, silence stops being freedom and becomes another form of waiting. The purpose is not to create a result. The purpose is to observe reality while returning your attention to your own life during this quiet space. Pay attention to patterns rather than isolated moments. A person may contact you once because they are bored, need help, or notice that your attention has changed. One message does not automatically prove care. Look at consistency. Do their actions match their words? Do they respect your time? Do they show interest when they need nothing from you? Do they take responsibility after conflict? Genuine effort is usually visible over time. It does not require constant pressure or repeated reminders. Silence can also reveal hidden motives. Some people enjoy your attention but do not value you as a person. They may become distant when you need support, but return when they feel lonely or want something. When you stop being constantly available, they may suddenly become more interested. But powerful observation requires you to ask why. Are they showing real change, or are they reacting only because they miss the benefits you provided? Their behavior after you create distance may reveal whether they value the relationship or simply value access. At the same time, silence can reveal your own patterns. When you stop contacting someone, you may discover how much of your effort came from fear. Perhaps you were afraid they would forget you. Perhaps you believed you had to remain useful to stay important. Perhaps you were constantly checking for signs that you mattered. These realizations are not reasons to criticize yourself. They are opportunities to understand where emotional dependence has been controlling your behavior. The quiet period can become a mirror. Without constant messages and emotional noise, you can ask, asterisk, asterisk, why do I feel uncomfortable when I stop chasing? What am I afraid will happen? Am I missing this person, or am I missing the attention and routine? Asterisk, asterisk. These questions help you separate genuine connection from attachment. Sometimes you may discover that the relationship was meaningful and deserves an honest conversation. Other times, you may realize that you were holding on to a pattern that repeatedly drained your energy. Silence does not mean refusing all communication. If a healthy relationship has been affected by misunderstanding, speaking openly may be the mature choice. Ignoring someone should not replace necessary conversations. The purpose is to stop overfunctioning, not to punish people for failing to read your mind. If you need space, you can communicate that clearly. If a problem matters, you can discuss it calmly. Strategic silence becomes unhealthy when it is used to create fear or force obedience. But when someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, manipulates your emotions, or expects unlimited attention without mutual effort, silence can protect your peace. You do not need to argue every time. You do not need to explain your value again and again. You can step back and allow your absence to reveal what your constant presence was hiding. As you observe, avoid making quick judgments. Some people may be dealing with responsibilities or difficulties you do not know about. A delayed response is not automatically rejection. Look at the larger pattern. Respect is shown through consistency, honesty, and willingness to communicate, not through constant contact alone. The goal is discernment, not suspicion. The most powerful part of silence is that it gives you information without forcing you into conflict. You learn who makes an effort when you stop carrying the connection. You discover who respects your space and who becomes demanding when they lose access. You see who communicates honestly and who only returns when they need something. Most importantly, you learn whether your peace improves when the emotional noise becomes quiet. When you stop chasing, you no longer have to guess as much. Actions become clearer. Effort becomes visible. Patterns become difficult to ignore. And instead of trying to force people to reveal their intentions, you allow their behavior to speak. And once silence has shown you what words could not, you can stop wasting energy explaining yourself to people who have already chosen not to understand. One of the most difficult ways to ignore someone is to stop explaining yourself to a person who has already decided not to understand you. Many people believe that if they can just find the right words, explain their intentions more clearly, or defend every detail of their behavior, the other person will finally see the truth. So they write long messages, repeat the same arguments, apologize for things they did not do, and keep returning to conversations that never create understanding. But powerful emotional distance begins when you recognize that not every misunderstanding is caused by poor communication. Sometimes the other person understands you perfectly and simply benefits from pretending not to. There is a difference between someone who is confused and someone who is committed to misinterpreting you. A confused person asks questions, listens to your answer, and remains open to clarification. A person who wants control may twist your words, ignore your explanation, change the subject, or bring the same accusation back after you have already answered it. If you keep explaining, you may become trapped in a cycle where every response creates another demand for proof. The conversation is no longer about truth. It becomes a way to keep you emotionally involved. This is where strategic ignoring becomes important. You can explain yourself once with honesty and clarity. You can state what happened, communicate your intention, and correct false information when necessary. But after you have spoken clearly, you do not have to repeat the same defense forever. Repeated explanation can slowly turn into a request for permission. Asterisk, asterisk. Please believe me. Please agree with me. Please stop seeing me this way. Asterisk, asterisk. When your peace depends on changing another person's opinion, you give them control over your emotional state. Powerful people understand that being misunderstood is uncomfortable, but it is not always dangerous. Someone may form an unfair opinion about you. They may assume the worst, question your motives, or tell a story that does not match reality. You may feel an urgent need to correct them, but not every opinion deserves access to your time. If the person is not involved in your life in a meaningful way, you may not need to defend yourself at all. Your character is built through consistent behavior, not through winning every argument. This does not mean you should remain silent when a serious false claim could harm your reputation, work, safety, or important relationships. In those situations, a clear and factual response may be necessary. You can correct the record without becoming emotionally trapped. The goal is to communicate what matters, document what is needed, and avoid turning the situation into endless personal conflict. You are protecting yourself, not begging to be accepted. Over-explaining often comes from fear. You may fear that someone will leave if they do not understand you. You may fear being seen as selfish, cold, or wrong. You may believe that if you explain enough, you can prevent disappointment, but you cannot control every interpretation. Some people will misunderstand you even when you are honest. Some will criticize you even when you act with good intentions. Accepting this reality can feel uncomfortable, but it creates freedom. You stop trying to manage every opinion and begin focusing on whether your actions align with your values. When you stop over-explaining, your communication becomes stronger. Instead of giving 10 reasons, you give one clear answer. Instead of defending every detail, you state your decision. You may say, asterisk, asterisk. I understand that you disagree, but this is my choice. Asterisk, asterisk, you may say, asterisk, asterisk. I have explained my position and I am not going to continue this argument. Asterisk, asterisk. You may say asterisk, asterisk. Das P can discuss this respectfully, but I will not keep defending myself against the same accusation. Asterisk, asterisk. These statements are not rude. They are boundaries around your attention. Some people may react negatively when you stop explaining. They may accuse you of avoiding the issue or acting differently. They may increase pressure because the old method of keeping you engaged no longer works. But their frustration does not automatically mean you are wrong. If someone only feels comfortable when you are constantly defending yourself, the problem may not be your communication. It may be the amount of control they expect over your choices. Ignoring unnecessary arguments also protects your emotional energy. Every time you repeat the same explanation, you may become more frustrated and less clear. You begin searching for new words, hoping this version will finally be accepted. But if the person is not listening, more words will not create understanding. Silence can end a cycle that explanation keeps alive. You do not have to continue participating simply because the other person wants another response. This is especially important when someone uses guilt. They may say, asterisk, asterisk, if you cared, you would explain everything. Asterisk, asterisk, they may demand immediate answers or act as if your boundary proves you are wrong. But caring does not require unlimited access. You can be respectful without giving someone endless emotional labor. You can communicate honestly without surrendering your right to stop. The purpose of ignoring is not to avoid responsibility. If you have made a mistake, acknowledge it. If you have caused harm, apologize and correct what you can. But after taking responsibility, you do not have to accept permanent punishment or endless accusations. Accountability has an end. Emotional control means knowing when you have done what is reasonable and when the other person is trying to keep you trapped in guilt. When you stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to understand, you create space for your actions to speak. You become less dependent on immediate approval and more focused on living according to your values. You realize that not everyone needs access to your full story. Not every accusation requires a defense. Not every disagreement needs a final answer. The strongest explanation is often a consistent life. Over time, your choices reveal your character more clearly than 100 emotional arguments. You do not have to convince everyone. You only have to remain honest with yourself and responsible for your actions. And when you stop spending your energy trying to change someone's opinion, you can remove your attention from their reactions and return it to your own life. The fifth psychological trick to ignore anyone is to remove your attention before you remove your presence. You can stop speaking to someone and still remain completely connected to them in your mind. You may check their social media, watch for signs that they miss you, ask mutual friends about them, reread old messages, or imagine how they will react to your silence. From the outside, you appear distant. Inside, your attention is still revolving around them. This is not freedom. It is emotional attachment hidden behind silence. Attention is powerful because whatever receives it begins to influence your thoughts. The more you monitor someone, the more space they occupy in your mind. A single post can change your mood. A small update can make you question your decision. A message can pull you back into a cycle you were trying to leave. This is why strategic ignoring is not only about what you say, it is about what you continue feeding with your focus. Many people believe they need to know what the other person is doing before they can move on. They want proof that the person is happy, lonely, regretful, or affected by their absence. But every search for proof creates another emotional connection. You begin living according to information that may not even be meaningful. A photo may show one moment, not the truth of someone's life. A status may be indirect, unrelated, or designed for attention. When you constantly interpret these signals, you give them the power to control your emotions without speaking to you directly. The first step is to stop monitoring. You do not have to make a dramatic announcement or turn your decision into punishment. You can quietly reduce exposure. Stop checking their profile when you feel bored, lonely, or curious. Stop searching for hidden meanings in every post. Stop asking other people what they are doing. If seeing their updates repeatedly pulls you back into unhealthy thoughts, use practical boundaries that protect your attention. The purpose is not to make them notice. The purpose is to stop reopening an emotional door you have chosen to close. This can feel difficult because attention often becomes a habit. You may reach for your phone without thinking. You may check because you are used to receiving information about them. You may feel a temporary sense of relief when you find something, followed by more questions and anxiety. Recognizing this pattern helps you interrupt it. When the urge appears, ask yourself, asterisk, asterisk, what am I hoping to discover? And will knowing it improve my life? Asterisk, asterisk. If the answer is no, you can redirect your attention before the habit takes control. Redirecting attention does not mean forcing yourself to stay busy every second. It means choosing where your energy can create something valuable. Return to work that matters to you. Improve a skill. Exercise. Spend time with people who treat you with respect. Build routines that make your life feel meaningful without depending on one person's presence. The goal is not to erase every memory. The goal is to stop making the person the center of your daily thoughts. This shift also changes the reason you are ignoring them. At first, you may be tempted to create distance, so they will miss you. You may hope your silence makes them return, apologize, or realize your value. But if their reaction remains your goal, they still control the outcome. You are waiting for them to validate your decision. Real emotional independence begins when you stop asking asterisk, asterisk, will they notice asterisk, asterisk, and start asking asterisk, asterisk, what kind of life am I building with the energy I have recovered? Asterisk, asterisk. Removing attention also means ending indirect communication. You do not post messages designed for them to see. You do not share quotes hoping they understand the hidden meaning. You do not try to make them jealous by showing how happy or successful you are. These actions may look like confidence, but they often keep you emotionally connected because every post is still waiting for a reaction. If your choices are designed to send a message to one person, that person remains part of your decision-making. Powerful ignoring is quiet because it does not need an audience. You do not have to prove that you have moved on. You do not need to perform happiness. You simply begin living with more attention directed toward your own values. Your progress becomes meaningful because it belongs to you, not because it creates regret in someone else. This does not mean you must remove every person from your life after a disagreement. Sometimes the healthiest choice is a conversation, not distance. Sometimes curiosity is normal, and sometimes a relationship can be repaired. But if repeated disrespect, manipulation, or emotional exhaustion has made distance necessary, protecting your attention becomes part of protecting your peace. The more attention you reclaim, the clearer your thinking becomes. You stop interpreting every action as a message about you. You become less reactive to things you cannot control. You begin noticing how much energy was being consumed by waiting, checking, and wondering. That energy can now strengthen your goals, your confidence, and your relationships with people who offer genuine respect. Your mind becomes calmer when you stop giving constant access to someone who repeatedly disrupts it. You do not need to hate them. You do not need to prove they were wrong. You can simply decide that your attention is too valuable to remain trapped in a cycle that no longer serves you. The deepest form of ignoring is not making someone feel invisible. It is reaching a point where their behavior no longer controls your focus, your mood, or your direction. And once you reclaim your attention, your absence can become a clear boundary, not a manipulation designed to force someone to return. The final psychological trick to ignore anyone is to make your absence a boundary, not a weapon. Many people use silence to create fear, jealousy, or uncertainty. They disappear so the other person will chase them. They withdraw attention to force an apology. They become distant while secretly watching every reaction, hoping their absence will create regret. But this is not true emotional freedom. When your silence is designed to control another person, your attention is still tied to them. You may be physically absent, but emotionally, you are still waiting for them to respond. Real distance begins when you stop using your absence to produce an outcome. You are not stepping back to make someone miss you. You are stepping back because repeated disrespect, manipulation, dishonesty, or emotional exhaustion has shown that the connection needs a stronger boundary. Your absence is not a punishment. It is a decision about what access you are willing to give to your time, trust, attention, and emotional energy. This is an important difference. Punishment focuses on the other person's pain. A boundary focuses on your protection. Punishment says, asterisk, asterisk. I want you to suffer because of what you did, asterisk, asterisk. A boundary says, asterisk, asterisk. I will not continue participating in a pattern that harms my peace, asterisk, asterisk. The first keeps you emotionally connected because you are watching for their reaction. The second allows you to move forward because your decision does not depend on whether they understand, agree, or change. Sometimes people will not understand your distance. They may accuse you of becoming cold. They may say you have changed. They may demand an explanation or try to make you feel guilty. But you do not have to return to an unhealthy pattern simply because someone dislikes your boundary. You can communicate your decision clearly when communication is safe and useful. You may say, asterisk, asterisk, I need space, asterisk, asterisk, or asterisk, asterisk. I am no longer comfortable with this pattern. Asterisk, asterisk, you do not need to create confusion or disappear without thought when a direct conversation is possible. A strong boundary can be honest without becoming cruel. At the same time, you do not owe unlimited explanations. If you have already communicated your limits and the behavior continues, repeating yourself may only keep the cycle alive. Your actions can become the consequence. You reduce contact. You stop sharing personal information. You stop being available for emotional demands. You remove yourself from arguments that never lead to respect. You do this quietly, not to create drama, but because you have learned that access should be connected to responsibility. Powerful people understand that closeness is not an entitlement. Someone may know you, care about you or have a history with you, but that does not give them unlimited permission to disrespect your boundaries. Trust is maintained through behavior. When behavior repeatedly damages trust, access may need to change. This does not mean you hate the person. It means you are taking responsibility for what you allow into your life. Distance can take different forms. Sometimes you remain polite, but become less emotionally open. Sometimes you limit contact to necessary conversations. Sometimes you stop discussing personal matters with someone who repeatedly uses your vulnerability against you. Sometimes you leave a relationship that has become harmful. The right boundary depends on the situation. You do not have to use the same response with everyone. The goal is not to ignore people as a habit. The goal is to become intentional about who receives your energy. The strongest boundaries are consistent. If you repeatedly say you are leaving but return every time the person offers temporary kindness, your boundary may lose clarity. This does not mean you must never forgive or allow change. People can learn, apologize, and improve. But real change is shown through consistent actions, not only emotional promises. You are allowed to observe over time before restoring trust. You do not have to give immediate access simply because someone says the right words. Creating distance may also reveal your own emotional dependence. You may feel lonely, guilty, or tempted to return simply because the old connection was familiar. Familiarity can feel safer than change, even when the relationship was unhealthy. During these moments, remind yourself why the boundary was necessary.